here to talk about graduate school. And if we're being completely honest, the word graduate school doesn't really mean anything too specific because lots of programs are graduate programs, which is technically defined as anything that you would study for a further degree past your bachelor's. So whether that's law school, medical school, business school, those are all graduate schools. But when we discuss them, they usually get separated out. So graduate school pretty much means any kind of master's or doctoral study, including but not limited to literature, history, biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, sociology, social work, public health, fine arts, and so much more. And obviously, these are not the same kind of programs. Yet most of these programs still require applicants to submit GRE scores. That should tell you that what you show on the GRE isn't necessarily about what you've learned in college or what you will study in graduate school. Instead, it's a standardized test that has to function for all those programs and many more. So you need to have the correct strategies to get a good score on the GRE. And today we will discuss those strategies. My name is Lakshmi Kanikkannan. I have been an instructor and tutor and content developer with the Princeton Review for about 5 years so far. I teach GRE, MCAT, SAT, and ACT, and as I mentioned, I do write content. So I've contributed to some textbooks, but we have, an entire team at the Princeton Review working to help students get into their dream colleges for over 35 years in a number of ways. And I am bringing that to this presentation as well, and I'm very, very excited. So the first main idea of this presentation, there are three, as you can see, but the first one in this presentation is just what is the GRE? So the first strategy you need to know is what the GRE is and just how it functions. The second one is general test taking strategies that should work on almost every standardized test, including the GRE. And finally, GRE specific strategies. When we're done today, you will know how to get the score that you need on the GRE by deploying the correct strategies. So number one, what is the GRE? It's called the Graduate Record Examination. And a graduate record examination isn't really descriptive of much beyond saying that it's a test that you need for graduate school admissions. But that's still important to know and revealing in its own way. The GRE is required at the majority of master's and doctoral levels graduate programs across many disciplines. And this is why it needs to be so broad. It functions for any imaginable graduate program. So it's a test designed to work equally for the humanities, the social sciences, and the natural sciences. And that makes it a general test in terms of content as well as format. Think of it as a test made to evaluate anyone interested in any education beyond a bachelor's. And to bring that point home even more, business schools and law schools are beginning to accept GRE scores. This is not all or even most business and law schools, but a small amount of these schools say that a good GRE score can prove that you are ready for an MBA or a JD. So once again, while the GRE isn't directly related to these programs, a strong score demonstrates capabilities for graduate study. But you can showcase your knowledge in a subject-specific area. The GRE does offer subject tests in 7 areas: biology, chemistry, literature and English, mathematics, physics, and psychology. Now, these are all still relatively general tests in those subjects, and there are still multiple choice tests, but it is one more indication that the main GRE is not a test of what you will learn in college or what you've learned in college or what you will learn in grad school. And one more thing you should know about the GRE, while not all graduate programs require a GRE score, you can't assume that one program that you want to is GRE optional just because another one is. There is no consistent pattern as to which programs do require it in terms of area of study or type of school. So you have to check with each individual program you want to apply to. And before we dive any further into the nuts and bolts of the GRE, we should go over a little bit about how the test is conducted and how you need to register for the test. And these rules and regulations demonstrate when and how you should take it. So the GRE is made by the ETS, who are the writers of the SAT for College Board. So if you think that the GRE would feel familiar, that's pretty much why. But there is a key difference from the SAT, which is that the GRE is taken on computers at the prometric testing centers. During the COVID pandemic, the GRE is offering an at-home online proctored version, but either way, you will take it on the computer. Because the GRE is a computer-based test, it is also offered year-round on most days of the week. You can take the GRE when it will work for you, and when you feel that you are prepared for it. I should note that this is not true of the GRE subject tests, which are only offered 3 times a year. These are also paper and pencil tests that are scored on a completely different scale. So you should almost think of these as a separate test entirely. Do not think that that means that you can take the test over and over. In fact, you are only allowed to register for the test 5 times in one 12-month period. So if you wanted to take the test each and every day, you would hit your max in less than a week. Yet 5 testing dates also allows you to retake the test you need in order to get the score that you want. And when you think about when you should take a test, know that your scores will be good for 5 years. So if you're thinking you will go to graduate school anytime in the next 5 years, it is worth it to take the test when you will do best. What all this adds up to is that the best time to take the GRE is during college, when you are in the habit of studying already and taking tests. You can arrange it around your schedule and then keep your score for 5 years. So do it when you'll get the highest score you can. The GRE has 3 sections: the analytical writing assessment or essay, the quantitative or math, and the verbal, which is actually what it sounds like. The first section is the analytical writing assessment. For this section, you will have to write 2 essays, one where you take a position and defend it, and another where you critique someone else's essay. These are very formulaic, straightforward essays, which is often where students struggle. You'll want to write an essay like you would for a college course, and the test is asking you to do something much more basic. Then you'll see 2 scored quantitative sections, 2 scored verbal sections, and 1 experimental section. The experimental section could be either math or verbal, and you won't know where it is, but it's not scored, so it won't affect your score. We're going to delve into the quantitative and verbal sections in one moment, but let's talk about that experimental section. So what is it really? Well, you know how companies conduct market research on new products? ETS is doing the same with you guys, but you get to pay for it, and it's a fantastic privilege of doing research for their company. Any of the 5 sections you will see after the essays could be experimental, and since you won't know which section is experimental, don't worry about it. If it seems really easy or really hard, don't waste time second guessing yourself. Just say, hey, it was probably the experimental section. In other words, don't let the way you perform on one section affect the rest of your test. So the GRE quantitative reasoning section is a math section, but the way it asks you to use math shows why calling it math would be a little strange. The content in these areas includes high school mathematics and statistics at a level that is generally no higher than a second course in algebra. It doesn't include trigonometry, calculus, or higher level math. So the math that you will see on the GRE shouldn't be that big an issue. Instead, they ask it of you in some strange ways. While you will have some normal multiple choice problem solving questions, you will also have select all that apply questions and numeric entry questions. The select all that apply is exactly as it sounds. You must choose all of the answer choices that are correct for a question. It could be 1, it could be up to 7, and it could be anywhere in between, depending on the question and the number of choices. There are also numeric entry questions where you must provide the correct answer yourself. But the quantitative comparison questions are usually the strangest for any student. Questions of this type ask you to compare 2 quantities, quantity A and quantity B, then determine which of the following statements describes the comparison. Quantity A is greater, quantity B is greater, the 2 quantities are equal, or the relationship can't be determined from the information given. You will likely not need to do that much math for these questions, but spot patterns and understand mathematical relationships. At least you are given a basic on-screen calculator to quickly figure out some equations, which looks like this. Just remember that this is a quantitative reasoning section, and doing the math, weirdly enough, isn't always the best approach. The GRE verbal section also has its own quirks and requires a specific approach that isn't directly related to what you've done in college. It is made of a few different question types that test different content and are presented in different formats. Each reading comprehension question is based on a passage that may range in length from one paragraph to several paragraphs. The test contains approximately 10 passages, the majority of which are one paragraph in length and only one or two of which are several paragraphs long. Paragraphs are drawn from the physical sciences, biological sciences, social sciences, business, arts and humanities, and everyday topics, and are based on material found in books and periodicals, both non-academic and academic. In other words, it covers every kind of reading imaginable. The text completion questions have a passage composed of 1 to 5 sentences. Within those passages are 1 to 3 blanks. Each blank has 3 answer choices, except single blanks, which have 5 choices. The answer choices for different blanks function independently. Selecting one answer choice for one blank will not affect what answer choices you can select for another blank. There is, however, a single correct answer consisting of one choice for each blank, and you will receive, unfortunately, no credit for partially correct answers. So all of those blanks have to be correct, which sucks. Sentence equivalence question consists of a single sentence with 1 blank and 6 answer choices. However, the key thing here is that these question types require you to select 2 of the answer choices. And again, you will receive no credit for partially correct answers. Yet, the most notable thing about the GRE is that it is a computer adaptive test. As a multi-stage test, you can navigate anywhere within the section with the click of a button. However, you can't skip to another section, and the thing that really determines your testing experience is that the test is adaptive by section. And so this means that the first section you'll see for either math or verbal will be of average difficulty. If you do really well, the second section for that subject will be pretty hard. If you do really poorly, the second section will be pretty easy. If you're doing so-so, the second section will be pretty medium. So if you're doing well, your GRE will be a tougher test. The good news is the GRE is scored accordingly, and the tougher second sections do allow you to get more points. The test is about 4 hours long. So what happens to anything when you do anything for 4 hours? Think about when you drive for 4 hours. You drift off, you lose focus. Same thing happens on the test. This is a test that requires practice and stamina, yet it also requires you to adjust your approach with each section. Think about that 4-hour drive, and now imagine you could be suddenly driving up a mountain in ice, or you could be going downhill on a wide highway, and you won't know what's coming until you're halfway through. That's why you need to use the strategies to make sure that you can do well on all sections, from the very first verbal or quant through whatever difficulty you face on the other sections. So this is kind of a graphic that represents this.